How are you, mate?
Give it a little test. All right, man. How you doing? You hanging in there?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's trying times, mate, isn't it? But you know, from out of
try and get positive. Yeah, right. Okay.
here's the thing: a friend of mine, right, says that for every negative, we have to find 5 positives.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a ratio.
It is. It is a ratio when at the minute everything's like zero.
Be easy the other way around. No problem at all.
It would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? All right. So here's the thing then, Steve. I want to go back, and I want to find out what the very, very first moment that you entered the entertainment industry. What was that first hour of that first day?
Wow. I would go right back to the point that I was actually not invited into the industry, but meeting up with a chance friend, someone I'd known in Jamaica, of all places, where I'd lived in the past, where I'd grown up in my early years, ended up here in the UK, and then met up with a friend again. And, you know, we're saying, what you're doing, you know, left college and what have you. And he says, right, I've started a special effects company and I'm making the cannons, pyrotechnic cannons for AC/DC. I said, what? You know? He said, well, yeah, they come out, their drummer has died. They've got this Back in Black tour and they want to mark the occasion and show their respect. So they have 21 cannons come out, you know, open up from these doors and these cannons shoot out and then they let off a pyrotechnic charge. And there are 21 of them and I'm building them, you know. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm working for the government doing electrical layouts for buildings, for army hospitals, army buildings, for public buildings. I said, wow, sounds much more interesting what you're doing. He said, yours sounds a lot more safe. I said, I don't know, screw safe. Yours sounds like a lot of fun, man. Love to get involved in that. And he said, well, we're only a small company, you know, I'd love to have the help, but I can't afford to pay you. He said, I'll tell you, I could feed you and you could sleep, you could come and stay with me in Birmingham and live on my couch, sleep on my couch. I gave up my nice, safe government job. I had my pension had already started running, you know, investing into your pension. I was only like 21. And I went, screw that. I'll jack that in. I'll come and live with you. And I started working for him. And he started making a moving light called the Autoscan. It was a Parcan in a moving yoke. And and from that, we took some advice and we met Wayne Howell before he'd started Artistic License, before he invented ArtNet, all of those amazing things. We met Wayne so young in his career and he was a super help to us. But then that company didn't carry on in the end. That chap went to work for Avolites and he recommended me to Avolites in a very busy period. So Avolites was super exciting. I don't know if I can carry on here. They had an interview. They gave me an interview on a Friday night. They were building all of the equipment for the Michael Jackson Back in Black tour. And they were absolutely short of staff, really need to push ahead. I got brought in for this interview on a Friday night. I was with the managing director. And the managing director said, you know, what can you do? You know, can you solder? Can you? I said, yes, I can solder. I can do looming cord. I've studied electronics. And he kept saying, but you're sure you can solder? I said, yes, and I can do this, and I can test things. And he asked me a third time, you really are sure you can solder? I said, take me downstairs, give me a circuit board. My soldering's brilliant. And then the only other question he asked, he said, can you start tomorrow? And I was in the office thinking, tomorrow's Saturday.
In reality, he'd got a problem. He needed somebody to solder, and you were the solution.
I was the solution. And was I available on the Saturday and Sunday? Start immediately tomorrow morning. And I said, yes, of course I am.
Did you end
up?
There
I was Saturday morning in Avolites and never looked back, you know.
Did you end up then going? Did you see the Michael Jackson tour? Did you reach the stage?
You know what? We went out as they arranged that a whole group of us, the whole company went to see that. And it was a real moment because it was at Wembley Stadium and just amazing, you know, to think, wow, you've been involved in this in some way, you know, in the assembly. I started off right, you know, really right back at ground level in electronic assembly and then worked up to test engineer, service engineer, through all those posts, eventually into technical sales. But yes, that was the first big concert we saw and the first one I'd ever been to, and we were actually involved. And I think that's
what a start! What a start! I mean, you know, start. So Jamaica, then. I mean, we're talking about you know, like, so you was brought up. Was you in Jamaica?
Yeah, I don't know. I sometimes don't like to come straight out with it, but we're in an interview, so I'm going to come straight out with it. So I've got some funny Jamaican connections. My father's English, my mother's Jamaican. They'd had me. They were here in London, freezing cold. He said, Steve, we had no money. It was freezing cold. We had this baby. It was bloody awful. And he said, I realized if I could talk your mum into going back to Jamaica, she had all these sisters that her mum would probably look after the baby. I'd be in Jamaica. And he ended, so we did. We went up there. We went back on a banana boat, funnily enough.
Serious?
We went back to school in England. They all went, oh, did you arrive on a banana boat? I said, mate, I left on a banana boat. But he said, you know, apparently he spent the first 6 months there carving and drinking rum under a tree. But anyway, my dad was there, and he eventually created a whole advertising business, an advertising studio. But the particularly interesting connection with me and the family in Jamaica is my second cousin is Colin Powell.
No, really?
Yeah, Colin Powell, who was, a lot of the younger people won't know who he is, but, you know, they thought he was going to run for president before Jesse Jackson. You know, they thought, oh, he's going to be the one. But his wife was so concerned about him getting assassinated back then.
He just didn't want to play a game.
He just didn't want to do it. But he was, of course, he was in the Joint Chief of Staff during the Gulf War, leading the whole sort of that whole Gulf War thing. And some people feel, you know, that he could be very, you know, why was he working with the right-wing side? But he was really a moderate. And I think to me, it was good that he was with the right, that he was pulling back that sort of very gung-ho, shady.
As a young man, you're growing up then in Jamaica, aren't you? You've got all these women around you looking after you. Your dad's like, you know, a free spirit now.
Bless.
You know, he's allowed to, you know, at the time he's allowed to kind of do what he wants, but even though, you know, whichever side he was more interested in, he would rein it back. And so you learned all about reining back power, reining back. And you also learned how to be a free spirit, because there's no freer place than Jamaica.
I feel so blessed. And the training, you know, sometimes my father would see some of the big parties you'd have at Plaza, and you put on these events, and he's going, Steve, how'd you do it? I said, Dad, I learned from you, you know. You used to have parties every 2 weeks, a real heavy, you know, big socializer. And I always was very interested in the conversation between the adults. I would always hang out at the adult parties and not go to bed and just listen up to them, you know, because I found it interesting. And I think that's really sort of set the tone for, I love chatting with people.
And that put you in good stead, because when you sort of joined Avolites in the very, very early days as a solderer, you know, and then probably moved into testing and stuff like that. But you had one big thing. You was very social, wasn't you? So customers would like you because you'd interact with them, tell them silly stories, I'm sure, and get down on their base level. You was never, you know, because of your upbringing, you was never too good for anybody in your head, where you'd always just be able to either rise to their level or lower to the level, whichever it was. You could be either side. And
I appreciate you saying that, Steve, because you know, I think to me, if I try and say, well, Steve, what are the things you're good at? People will very often come to me and ask me about new technologies, and quite often new technologies that they might be embarrassed to ask the provider of that technology. They'll come up and say, for example, Notch is a very interesting generative content program, but they know if they go to Notch, these are very, very clever people, and they might feel a bit silly to ask their questions. And I'll always feel that I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, mate, I don't really understand it either, but I'll tell you what I know. And I've got some great people around me, and I can bring them in and they'll tell us what we know. So, and it's really a case of making the person feel that, oh, he's not the only one who doesn't understand this technology. In a weird way. All the time.
In a weird way then, Avolites really were kind of, in a funny way, it was almost like bringing open source into the Avolites community without it being open source. So you would be talking to everybody on the level. You'd be discussing, you know, ideas, inspirations, and you'd be open to everybody's thought process. So the product would take on a whole new meaning, wouldn't it? Because you was the interface. So you had the technical understanding, but you could talk to the LDs, you could talk to the people on the set. You got it, didn't you? So you was that plug, the missing gap to bring the product to life.
And I love hearing you say that, but I feel a bit of a charlatan because there's so much of it that I don't understand. But as I say, I think a lot of it is about putting your hand up when you don't understand, so that then people can help you. Because what I notice, and I think men are especially bad at this, and it is a lot of men in our industry. And I love telling the women, say, look, you know, you're much faster to put your hand up and say, look, I don't really understand this. Can someone explain it to me? You know, whereas the men will try and bluff it quite often.
Yeah.
So no one notices. And so I really like to be the first one where if they're going to bluff it, I'll put my hand up and say, look, I don't really understand it. Why don't we ask the engineer to explain it again to us? Knowing that whoever's with me is glad to hear that explanation for the second time. Because I feel very strongly that we were there when it went from analog to DMX, and people were very concerned, and so many people got me, you know, would ask me on the quiet without their friends around, Steve, what is it? What do I need to do? And we took them through that step. And then moving lights came, and you were right at the forefront of that, and we were working with you as well. And we learned how to do things and work with new technology. And if you remember, Steve, we were doing time code shows back when it was rocket science.
That's right. I mean, we had
amazing presentations.
We had VRXs at your place, didn't we? And you were creating all this time code.
Great units they were, and you know, so always. And I think you're right. We like to be at the forefront and pushing it forward, but also helping people to deal and use with those technologies.
And to keep up with that technology. So if they, you know, and obviously because people can't be, you know, they can't run their businesses and also be as tech head as what you guys are at Avolites. So having somebody that wasn't looking down on them and thinking that they were thick in basic terminology, you know, you were sort of saying, look, okay, look, you know, I know as much as you do, which is probably not a big deal.
Not much. Let's find out.
But what I do have is the ability to connect to everybody that does and translate that so that you can understand it as well as me. Should we do that?
Yeah, that's right. And make it fun. Make it fun. So let's strip away the ego. And something that I've been, you know, people think, oh, you know, people are asking, saying, are you really busy now or not busy at all? You know, because there's no jobs going on, and there aren't. But I've never been so busy. Honestly, I'm shocked at how active we've been, which is using the time to help people catch up on those things that they haven't had the time to do because they've been
training companies. I noticed you're doing the training courses.
That's right. We have the training courses online. And then myself and Ron, we're delivering these innovation tours. So one is about the innovations that we've delivered over the years and how we've arrived at this point. What were all the steps that took us to this point, and where is it likely to go in the future? And then also another tour where we look at AI projects, the video projects, interesting projects, and say, well, let's look at some of the technology behind them. So again, it's a way of people getting comfortable or getting inspired by things they've seen elsewhere and think, oh, I could adapt that to something I want to do. And Avolites look like they're a company who could help talk me through that process and connect me very often. One thing I feel really pleased about is, you know, I've loved going to events, love meeting people. So I have met a lot of people in my career. And I think a lot of what I offer people is being able to connect, not being the one who solves a problem, but understanding their problem and then finding the right person who's trustworthy and competent and able to help them with that project.
And what sort of, you know, what sort of bands have been sort of controlled by Ava? I mean, give me some names of some of these bands.
I think when we've been there for just so long, it's a longer list than you could, you know, because all of them with U2 and the Jackson Tour and Tina Turner and Aerosmith in the past, it sort of goes on and on. We've been doing some really exceptional work with Eric Prydz, the DJ. He has a huge production. I have some lovely footage on that, huge, great 8-meter LED cube that then we supply the control for. The Bon Jovi show, which was an AI projection show, was quite incredible. I mean, one of the highlights for me also was that large audience screen within the 2012 Olympics.
Yes,
a lot of people didn't realize we were controlling that, and that was the point at which we got involved in video and we delivered that, and it was, you know, the show of a lifetime. But the bringing video together has been a real passion of mine, and now a passion of Avolites throughout the company. Because we're so convinced that it has to be coherent. It all goes into the same place. It all goes into our eyes.
Yes.
So how do we bring this together? And I'm really pleased, and Synergy has delivered on that by using the video to be able to control the whole lighting rig as one coherent canvas. And what we see is now other companies like Martin following suit, with a P3 controller, also treating fixtures as pixels.
Yeah. It's
And
clever, which is a clever way of doing it.
Yes, and I think this is a natural progression. If we look at the way that fixtures now are multi-celled, and so they're sort of like little video screens that move.
Correct.
So
Yeah. Now, before we move into the video side of it, because there's a lot to talk about on the video, we're just going to step back slightly, okay? And now the way these podcasts works, it's the warts and all. We like the highs and we love the lows, okay? So I wanted to pick a couple of moments in your career in Avo where the shit's just hit the fan.
Oh my Lord!
Give me a couple of crackers, because we all have them. Oh,
wow!
You learn from them.
But the funny thing is your low points so quickly become the high points.
Yeah.
You can flip from one to the other. And so if I think about Kool and the gang at Forest National in Belgium, where the audience are all in the venue, and I've got the machine in pieces. It's spread all around me, and then they're starting to slow hand clap, and the LD's sort of asking me, well, how long is it going to take? And I think, well, it's going to take however long it takes, plus however long you keep talking to me.
Please stop talking to me.
Trust me, no one in this venue is keener to get this machine working than you are. And not to say they're unreliable. We've had great reliability. We've had thousands of machines out there. But from that moment when you put it back together, I get goosebumps right now talking to you, because I remember the ohm reading across a switch and reading 600 ohms. And no, that should be infinity. There shouldn't be a connection. Oh, it thinks that switch is closed because there's dirt built up on the back of the circuit board. Because of course in our industry, nobody bloody cleans everything, got smoke fluid on everything.
Yeah.
So, cleaned up the tracks, got rid of that partial short, machine's back in action, and I'm dancing with all the rest of them. Feeling happy than ever.
You're seconds away from disaster then at times, aren't you?
Well, you feel, because at the time you think, I still can't figure out what's wrong, because I've checked everything. It has to work. And then you realize it's dirt built up on two tracks, and it's shorting across because of the smoke fluid. But I have to say, to me, the top high-low point was Frank Zappa. I've been a Frank Zappa fan for many, many years. And I was so pleased to be doing his tour, and we'd even bought tickets before, because I didn't know we were going to be doing his tour. So we were looking forward to it at Wembley, and there we are at Wembley, and it was so silly because we had all of the system, but we'd put on a VGA screen to control gel jets with a digital output, and this is pre-DMX. So this was super early days.
Okay.
And serial data and monitors was all quite new. Anyway, we went down there only to fix the monitors, and next thing we know, we'd stopped the whole machine. It stopped. It was only the monitor not working, so the color changer output not working, and then we'd stopped it all. And the moment where Frank's manager came up to us and said, Frank's really pissed now. And I thought, Frank Zappa is waiting for us backstage to
No, Frank Zappa is waiting for you.
I mean, not very happy with it. But to be honest, it was a 15-minute delay. The pressure was on. And again, you watch the concert on a high that you could never replace, because you thought,
it was so low.
Really wrong.
Such a low starting point.
Never lost a show. Touch wood.
Yeah. But it's incredible, because that level of, what's the word for it? I guess you must feel sometimes when equipment, because when you are making the desk is controlling everything. Okay, even if it's live TV, whether it's concert, all the same. Live TV, equally is bad. I mean, I remember being in, I think it was in Doha, and they paid us very good money, to a team of 8 of us to go out there and program up this digital cube, or number of cubes, that was on for like 3 minutes. That's it, right? And the fear factor of it coming on in that live 3 minutes and something not going straight, that's a big worry, isn't it?
Yeah, because you never ever know, do you? Until the moment, and you check all the bases, and you keep checking them.
And some things just happen, don't they? And you don't know why.
Well, you and I mean, we've seen that transition, and thank God for it. That that the accountants understand and the whole production understands now how important it is to have some level of backup.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
we've gone through the very sort of naive and quite sort of childish, I would say, when backup was being introduced, and a lot of other companies were also encouraging their users to use backup. And people would say, what, do you not have confidence in your machines? You said, well, would you drive a plane that had no backup system or only had one engine? Or, would you get on that plane? So now what we're seeing, and seeing it more and more, which is there's some level of backup. Now, of course, it helps that these days you can get a lot of backup out of a laptop and a small, small machine. Might not do everything you wanted, but you'll keep your show going, and you'll be able to transfer your show to it and have it in the network and all of those things that make it very easy by having everything networked. All your files are up to date across the service, and it's not expensive. So, and the point there to me is that every production is really important to the people on it. It can be a small festival, it can be a wedding, doesn't matter what it is, it's important to the people you're delivering that production for.
Oh, massively, whether it's a massive concert.
Your responsibility to have some B plan, and hopefully never used, and normally never used. But
here's the thing, right? Now, people that are watching this podcast, and there'll be quite a few in reality, they don't understand the full workings of Avolite or anything else. So just talk me through that basic step. So let's just pretend that I am I am Robbie Williams, okay? And I go and see, I don't know, or my management go and see Adrian Brooks, for example, at Production Park, and they build me a stage, right? And then it eventually comes on to the lighting and the control system. So what is sort of like, what is hour one of Avolite's sort of starting point to build a fantastic light show? What has to go, what do you have to run through?
Wow. It's really sort of looking at what they want to achieve. Really, each one of them becomes so unique in their delivery. And so for us, it's really getting across the fact that I think in the past it was much more about us manufacturing equipment, and then it would go out and we'd sort of lose track of it because people would just use it, people would program it for the looks they wanted, and off they go. And now what we see with the far more challenging productions, for example, Arcadia at Glastonbury, fantastic example where they're using AI video, they're using Titan's control, all their lighting, everything time-coded together. So it's much more a case of, guys, we're here for you. We have programming suites, we have the engineers here. Let's do all of the complicated stuff, either within our building or with the aid of our support team, because you can achieve so much more. You can track lights, we can use Capture and Console Link within Capture to track lights around spaces or track objects. We can, you can bring in other technologies that are available, MIDI triggers direct from the artist. We can actually take the data right now, the data from the Pioneer CDJs straight into the lighting control. You see the audio waveform on the lighting mixer. To me, that's an amazing step. You actually see the drops before they happen visually as a designer. It's wicked. We use the heartbeat, we use the BPM heartbeat to control the speed of the different effects, and we detect the leading edge of the note. So, it's bang on.
Just think, all that started from silly time coding, doing little light shows at Plaza.
Yeah, that's right, because that's such a great testing ground, isn't it?
It all began, isn't it?
Marvelous testing ground. We did something last year. I don't know how these podcasts run. I've got the video here on the computer, called Splinter, which is where we really made a showcase. It was like an art piece. We took a separate venue and made a huge installation art piece.
This was over in America, wasn't it?
In America, that's right.
I heard that on the podcast with Marcel. You discussed. I mean, obviously, I've never seen this, but it's supposed to be an interactive experience like no other.
I don't know. Maybe we could nip it in at the end of the podcast. I've got a 1 minute little.
Yeah. We can do that. We'll put that in. That's not a problem at all.
Looks very cool. Looks very. But it was showing generative video, generative audio, when everything is really locked together, and the audio and the proximity of the people to the projection surfaces is controlling the dynamics of the video and the dynamics of the audio. So you as a person were controlling the installation and what you saw and heard around you.
So would that adjust almost like the pixelation of the content, how close or how far apart you got?
It would be the size and also the sort of energy, I would say.
Really?
The energy of the content. I mean, I don't know how you explain that, because it's not a normal moving image.
Well, we're going to see it at the end of this podcast, aren't we? 1 minute.
Yes, you're going to. That's right. We're going to show it to you. We'll check out my presentation techniques.
Oh, just love it. Here's the thing, right? So we've now moved a little bit forward. We've had a few hiccups on the stages. We've repaired a few, bits of machines, as you call them. I call them desks, you call them machines, because that's the mentality, isn't it, in your head? These are just, that's what they are. They're machines, right?
Different control machines, yeah.
And now the AI, I mean, let's face it, what you did with AI is just, it's hideous. It's madness. I mean, you just brought video into a whole new realm. I mean, okay, there's other media servers out there. There's powerful media servers out there, but AI took it pretty much to a new level, didn't it?
Yes, and I believe it's fair to say that, because each one of those media servers, excels in their own ways, and they have their own strengths and weaknesses. I'll never knock it and say we have got the thing that wins on every level. What we do have is video that's completely incorporated within the lighting control.
Yeah.
So again, just like seeing the audio waveform in your lighting console, you now see the video previews in your lighting console. I would have never thought that day I would see that day. And I stand there with my mouth open, looking, thinking, wow, I'm looking at multiple video streams coming into the lighting console. So you can not just know what's going on with the video, you can use those videos to control the intensity and color.
Well, the last time you stood there with your mouth open going, wow, was when you got off the banana boat and it hadn't sunk.
Go, wow, this place is cool.
So the AI was another wow moment.
It's such a blessing. And I tell you, I went back quite a few years ago, and I would always go visit the rental companies and some of the productions, because I was interested to see what's going on, visit the TV. And you think, oh, there's a lot they can learn. And, so with myself and another lighting designer, John DaCosta, who is the light designer for Sean Paul, he's sort of introduced Avolites to a lot of people in Jamaica. And now I visit companies who have 4 media servers, a Sapphire, and doing big productions. You've got the American companies love coming down there to do their corporates in Jamaica. I mean, which executive doesn't want to go to Jamaica for a week for a corporate presentation? And so doing some fantastic work, really technical. And in fact, we'll be delivering all 3 of our innovations tours, our technical tours, the AI tour.
Do you think some of your soul is in some of these products? I mean, do you feel that you've tried to help, influence the products and make them as free as you are? Have you tried to make them, almost adaptive? Have you tried to give them every level of freedom that you could possibly put into a machine? Have you tried to do that, do you think?
That's such a lovely comment, and I need to be really careful, because I suppose what happens is I will focus on some of the small influences I say I've had and the funny ways they might have come about. But the team are just delivering functions of such complexity that I'm here. I have the smallest Avolite product, or almost the second smallest, which is a little Titan 2, which I can then plug into my laptop and get all of the functionality of the big machines. And so I'm here desperately trying to keep up and learn all the new functionality they've put in. And I think where I've managed to score is on some more straightforward stuff, like the double touch record, which has been when you're with a designer late at night, and in that particular case, after a couple of glasses of wine, and trying to do something that seemed, and we couldn't achieve it. And it was a simple record. And then you realize, oh no, we're supposed to press that button first. And then we look at it and think, well, maybe we could do it just without pressing that button, just with a double touch. And everyone loved it. Everyone said, great, that's a much easier way to work, which has sort of come very serendipitous, maybe, just by seeing that, oh, is there an easier way to do this? And And very often I've been the conduit between designers, either in a festival stage at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you see them struggling with a feature and you think, well, is there a better or an easier way that could be done? And then we look at it with the team, but without the whole design team now, it just, the feature wouldn't get delivered properly to fit everyone's needs. And this has been a big change in Avolites. Originally, what would happen is I would bring in designers, we would talk to them, find out what they liked, didn't like. I would sit with my partner Rick, and then we would design the software and how it should work, and the software department would deliver it. As it got more complex, what we found was a much better way of working was to create a whole design team of software engineers who use the product for real lights, input from sales team and support desk, input from lighting designers, and then we would sort of write out the features and almost pretend to use them to see if they worked, and then all be able to comment as a group.
And that's a really good idea,
really powerful design team.
Yeah. So you actually start to pretend and almost dream they actually really worked. And then you'll be talking about, right, well, if I switch this and do that, what happens here? How does that
happens next?
I mean, we have a similar relationship with Tim Mitchell, who's our software engineer. I know he writes manuals for some people here.
That's right.
Tim is a fantastic guy. I mean, he's been with us for 25 years, right at the very, very early days of Abstract, and has been responsible for the sound to light, the fantastic sound to light that we had in the DJ products that made us, millions as a business. And now, we're growing up now because that market's gone. And we have, during this COVID-19, we are now designing products that are ready for stage. And Tim is obviously doing the software with myself. So I design the infrastructure of it and he makes it happen. Yeah. So you're going to see some pretty interesting stuff coming from Abstract show lighting in the very, very near future. And, we're using this shit time, I'll call it that because that's what it is, with COVID-19. And it destroyed everybody's business, tipped it upside down, but we refuse to allow it to destroy our soul. So what we've done is we've gone and embarked on a huge R&D process, because we don't normally have enough time for lots of R&D, because we're all wrapped up in tours, or like you are, or wrapped up
in the manufacturing and the delivery. Yeah.
So now we've got a team of 4 people, which we normally have only got a team of 2, and now we've got a team of 4, and they're just R&D in, day out, writing software day in, day out. Yeah. So hopefully when we come out the other side, we've got something that people will love.
Really good place. Yeah.
This is my theory, Steve. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But,
no, it is. That's exactly.
I think a lot of touring companies are going to have to sort of be a little bit careful on the purse strings and not spend too much money. So they're going to have to, like Peter Johansson said in an earlier podcast, they're going to have to reuse the stuff they've already got. Okay, maximize on that, because they're probably not going to afford to be able to go and buy another 100 Mac 12 billion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they're going to have to use people like yourself that can make the shit they've got do more. Right. So, and that can be simple software updates into gear they've already got. It can be training processes that you've put in place and training them to get more out of their product. And what Abstracts are looking to do is what we did in 1990 is we're going to say, right, when the large companies stutter a little bit, which they will do, because it's hard to get a £100 million business getting back to 100 million in the first week after you reopen. Okay. So Abstracts, if we make this fantastic range of pixelated products and hardware, and we make it at really sensible prices, we could really grow from that.
You're in the right place. Absolutely. And I think this is the thing, whether you want to call it make, do, and mend, or reuse what you have, they are going to have to create those wow moments that they've been delivering. But it's a lot easier to deliver those wow moments when you have a substantial budget. And when that budget's gone, that's going to be challenging. But I think just like you, I think not as challenging as it could be, or they might think it will be. But what they need to do then is really leverage on the features they have. And as a manufacturer, a frustration for us is very often we see, I would say, 30% of the features being used extensively, and some of the more subtle features being used not at all, because people haven't had the time to learn them, get comfortable with them.
Yeah.
So, and not just training. I mean, if I think about it, so I might think of a keyframe shapes, which was an industry-leading feature, which we're now seeing copied, you know, for want of a better word, copied in other consoles. It's turning up in other consoles. Now, if I think of the person who is like an absolute master of that feature, and I think of that designer, Nathan Wan, you know, he smashes it. And so I think if I can now get some of those techniques that he's developed and help other designers to say, oh, wow, that's a good idea. Not to copy him, but to learn how to use the feature to its best advantage, because the feature's already there. You've already paid for it.
What we're trying to achieve now, which I think is pretty cutting edge. Okay, so what we're looking to do is all our peripheral lighting, because you're going to have your video screen. Some, you know, they might get a little bit smaller or whatever, depending on budgets and this, that, and the other. But there's always going to be the need for lighting to the sides that just take on that expression and make it wider, but without putting massive screens up. Okay, and which is where the new abstract pixelated product will fall, you know, drop straight in. But what we're achieving is using ArtNet as the main driving force. So you'll drive your pixels via ArtNet, and we can talk more about that. You know, I can let you have some products to play with and connect to your gear. But what we're also and what we're also doing though is we're then having these 3 layers that you can overlay over the top, so that you've got our own unique macros that create our own unique patterns that you can layer and use them as well. So if you don't have the time, or you've not got the you know the time to pixelize every single thing in the environment, you can then use the DMX macro mode via ArtNet as well, because it's just DMX is just more on. So we will receive ArtNet or DMX, it doesn't matter, to control those macros. Okay, so the idea is that if you want to do a big sparkle, you can sparkle out to our products in 2 channels.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Given those tricks that allow you to get those effects, but without eating up your time. Or as you say, you could layer on top.
Yeah. Watching your videos, I noticed one thing was very, very paramount, even to something as massive as an AI. You have to make sure that you don't control the black pixels. So, you know, there's no point having video squares, you know, and then a load of blank spaces, because you're processing nothing and it's going to slow everything down. So to me, that says, right, well, okay, then, well, that nothing space, I can fill that with my products. And you know, it's going to take no processing power whatsoever, but you're going to have massive effects. So your AI can be controlling all your video screens, and then just say, hey, Steve, give me a sparkles over there, please. And boom, done. And that can be expanded out as big or as small as this, you know, as you want to. So I'm really, really keen for myself and Tim to get a little closer to Avo, so that we can be at your level, but for peripheral product, so that you know, it's something that you recognize within your system and it works brilliantly well. So the LDs can say, well, look, let's have some abstract gear, because we know it's Avo. We know it works beautiful off the Avo gear, because it's been, you know, it's been written to do that. And it's not going to be expensive. Okay. So people can put it into their higher stock without eating up huge amounts of budget.
Yeah, and that's going to be just so important. You can't say that enough. And I know you recognize that. We recognize that. And I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head, that you need to be able to offer full control for those who have the time for full control. And we could talk ad infinitum about how you could map with the consoles, or map with AI, and map all the LEDs and do whatever you want. But it takes time. And if you're really fast and proficient on it, it takes less time. And if you're not, it takes more time. It still takes time. And so you're right. Sometimes people just will not have that time, and they just need to pull it out of the bag and have those built-in macros, but doing interesting things, so that all their shows are not looking the same.
And we
learn a lot from each other. We can help each other a lot, because in all our personality system, we can label all of your macros so the user sees them. They lay out immediately on the screen in the palette. So
I've said to Tim, look, Tim, we need to rip the rule book up here, because we've done it. We've done it a certain way. We've got away with that for 7 years. We've done very well out of it. We need to rip the rule book up now. We're starting again, because what I'm looking for is liquidity within the control, so that the effects become liquid with simple adjustments. But also, we also need to menu them, so that if they go onto an Avo console, you go layer 1 sparkle and boom, you've got it. Go layer 1 comet, boom, you've got it. But you've also got the ability and flexibility to do other shit that's not being done right now. So that's where the level of intelligence is kicking in. So, I mean, I know I'm 56, but you never lose that passion. You never lose that passion.
Yeah. You know what? I quite often won't. Sometimes when age starts to come into the conversation, I'm like, all right, we talk about something else or I'm leaving.
Oh, no, I agree with
No,
it.
in a bad way, Steve. Steve, I spend so much of my time at festivals, clubs, late at night, and then I might speak to people either my age, but very often I speak to people younger than myself.
Yeah.
And I hear this comment going, "Oh no, I'm too old. I can't go to festivals anymore. Or, I can't go to clubs." And I just refuse to even listen to it. You know, because you've got a passion for it. I've got a passion for it. Is the thing, if people say, what do you enjoy most? And it's great launching a new product or seeing somebody use it in a really good way, and that's really exciting.
And that's what gets me. That's what makes me tick.
But Steve, more than anything else, I spend so much time, and I ask myself about this. I spend so much time looking at the audience.
Yeah.
Whether it be Glastonbury or Global Gathering or in a club or in a small event, where you look at the audience, you think they're loving it. They're absolutely loving it. And you're part of the delivery of that experience.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it?
And it gives them a reason to go back to their jobs and do whatever they're doing and all of those necessary things. But at the weekend, they had a cracking weekend and they're feeling on fire again. And
let's take a look at another major sort of time point in yourself and Avo. When Carlton Television, you went into management buyout and you bought Avo back, and Avo is now part of your soul again and your partners and all the rest of it. Now the rest of that, of course, is history until we get to a point then where we've got this young, free and single entrepreneur that's bought his business back with his mates, and then one day somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody else, said, I think what we'll do now is we're going to make Steve the managing director.
Oh. Well, no, that was a sort of funny route, really, because the way things repeat themselves. That was after the Gulf War, had a huge effect on the company, and Carlton were wanted to move into TV franchises. Yeah. So we weren't part of their core business, and yes, they decided they would sell us off or close us down. And I just felt so passionate about Avolites. I always have done, really, just right here in the heart. Yes. And I knew nothing about management buyouts or anything else. But as I said before, I meet a lot of people. I know a lot of people. And so I reached out to someone who was in the industry, Mickey Johnson, was the sales director of Nexo, lovely character. And he helped advise us and bring it all about. And so we did make that happen. And in his very first instance, there was the discussion of, so it was an assumption, I think, that I would be taking over as managing director. To which I said, no, I'll be sales director. I know what I'm best at. I know my skills. I know what I'm.
I can only enlighten how I feel this would have gone, right? I can imagine there being a huge, great big freight ship, which now this represents Avo, and I can imagine there's this guy on the back with a little barge rudder going, turn, you fucker, turn.
I think one of the difficulties with me in that particular role, because much later, once my partner Rick stepped down, we agreed he'd be managing director, I'd be sales director. Then when Rick stepped down from that role and is now chairman, I did take over as managing director for about 2 years, maybe almost 3 years. But one of the difficulties, if you're managing director, what I came to realize is you need to look after the business internally. You need, and there's so many parts to that, not just managing all the staff that everyone works together well, but the supply chains and all of the internal workings of the business. And I have to say, with me, it sounds a bit of a throwaway comment to say, the customers come first or the designers come first. Yeah. But I would tell you, if somebody walks through the door and I hear that voice that I recognize, and so often I do recognize the voice, I'll just stop whatever I'm doing and leave my desk and, hey, John, how are you?
Because that's you, isn't it? That's you.
And I can't stop. And so as managing director role, you think, no, that just wasn't the right role. We have a great managing director now, Paul Wong, and he's come from Bosch Security Systems, but he was with Bosch when they owned Midas. So he'd been to Plaza, he loves his music. He said he was the only goth in Southport. The only Chinese guy in Southport. What a character. But he loves his music, been to loads of dance events, you know, before he came to us, and loves coming to events with us, came to Glastonbury with us. And he's great, but he is someone who can focus on the business, focus on the spreadsheets, focus on the budgets, the things that, you know, Rick and I, you know, Rick was better at, but neither of us were at that level.
Yeah.
And so it's really what the company needed in this time. And so things are singing. We've got, you know, we previewed our new control range at last year on a private preview as part of Splinter.
Yes.
Obviously, we're hoping to do it this autumn. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But we're going to shock the industry. I'll tell you here and now.
It's going to be exciting, and this is why, you know, I recognise that. I recognise that.
When you're allowed in, we'll show you when you come downstairs. Because bring some lights. I mean, it'd be fantastic. We can do so much more now. When, you know, I think the users very often miss this point. They don't realise how much can be achieved by the two manufacturers. You're an absolute powerhouse in optical design, in what it produces visually. And we're very good at what we're doing in terms of how to control it through a software user interface. And then when we get together and get those two design teams and technical teams together, it just sings.
Well, this is right. And this is what, you know, I recognize. I think listening to the podcast with you and Marcel, and you was talking about, I don't know if he was over in Las Vegas or wherever you were, but you were talking about the new system that you'd got, the immersive system, and you put it in a warehouse in the back and beyond. And people came, you know, they came to see this.
Right.
And, you know, he was saying that he was amazed by it. But what it said to me was, look, you know, you're thinking in a different way. And it wasn't really until COVID-19 that gave me the space, the breathing space in my head to start thinking sideways and start, right, you know, what's Steve Warren up to? Why is he doing what he's doing? So, you know, I needed to catch up in my head and start thinking, well, I want to hit the touring market because it's still going to be a great place. You know, 2 years from now, it'll be back and it'll be fantastic. And if we get our act together, we could be a part of that, without a doubt. You know, Abstract could be a part of that. And so we're looking forward to working together with people like yourself again, Avo. And I mean, we've done it before in the past. You know,
that's right, and achieved really good things, haven't we?
Brilliant. You know, small and tiny things, but at the time they were massive things.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think one of the things that's so great now is the way the industry's expanded sideways, that way, every way, hasn't it? You know, because, you know, we've been involved in corporate presentations, rock and roll shows, theatre, all of these different things. But now you see, you know, a shop front being able to use your LED products and then control it from some remote box, you know, with a laptop, you know, in a cupboard.
Crazy, isn't it?
Program it all up. And in applications that we're never using what we produced before, shopping centers, art exhibitions. We've just done a massive museum in Qatar, huge. Things that we would have never thought were our core market. And it's just, as it all expands. So I'm seeing a lot of users using their own control system, running out of their laptop and going, right, what are the most flexible fixtures that I can hook that up with? And it's opened up so much opportunity. And I think this is where you and us, we could really...
Well, what'd be lovely is if, you know, one way or another that we can sort of, you know, hook together with the LDs, you know, so that the actual product that we create. Now, the core idea is that we have one main driver, one main pixel driver, and then that has the flexibility to adapt itself to all the different fixtures that we create. So if somebody has to invest in the product, they only have to invest in one drive source, and then that drive source will be totally via the internet. You'll be able to update it to drive the latest products, adjust it, you know. So that's the whole point, is that the investment remains just once. They buy it once and it will last them 10 years.
And it's true, people don't, understandably, they don't want to pay for peripherals that are not producing light. You know, I have to say, we're normally sort of get the violin out and say, well, they just want more lights, more lights, more LED strip, more of the stuff they can see. Yeah. And so sometimes we feel that the control aspect can be overlooked. Now, in the touring industry, that's not really true. The control aspect is recognized as to what you need and what needs to deliver. But in the club markets, I think in club and installations, people want to spend money on the things they see, i.e. the things that produce light. And so part of our battle is twofold, really, is one, to get them to realize what you can achieve with that extra functionality and why it's important to have a control system at a certain level. But then the other side is, once they have that control system, making sure they're using all the features that they've now bought. Because, you know, that's a great sadness to see a machine underutilized when we've manufactured it, we've been paid, the customers bought it and paid us, and then not getting the most out of it, you know.
I guess that's where the tuition comes in, isn't it? That's where
there's been such a drive for us, Steve. We've now got the Avolites Academy that runs 4-day courses. There are two-day courses, a beginner and intermediate course, and then the advanced course that runs for 2 days. We can't get over just how popular that's been. Sometimes it's booked out for 2 months or 3 months.
Now that
we've the resources to
I
avoid
assume that the majority of Avolites is furloughed. I'm assuming, yeah.
Yes, was about 60%, now about 70%, which means the remaining 30% of us are running our ass off.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, how do you, you know, in your opinion, how do you see, when do you see the exit, and how do you see the exit for everybody in the entertainment industry? What is your prediction? So if we watch this back in 6 months' time, it'll be interesting, because we'll review all this in 6 months' time. There's another podcast. But what is your, tell me how you see the industry, you know, £1 billion odd more a year industry. How do we exit this?
Steve, that's a question. I'm taking a deep breath here, because you think that's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's or the opposite, the question you don't really want to be asked, because we're all trying to second guess it. I mean, I take part in, and Marcel, as you know, also runs that sort of Zoom group in America, which, you know, so I was on Zoom with them until midnight last night, where you're listening to everyone's views. And I'm normally a very optimistic character. And often I think that optimism wins through, you know, because people do love to go out. People love that inclusive and group energy that they get when they're out at a real event, you know. And they'll even put up with sleeping in a shitty tent, a bad toilet to get that. So God bless them, because they love it, and it drives them, you know. So we know it's coming back. No question. It's in human nature to connect and do these events. And we'll put up with all sorts of, you know, when you look at rainy Glastonbury's, and they still sold out every year.
Put with it.
They love it. I love it. We love it. So we know it's coming back. I'd love to see those big shows coming back before next spring, but you do hear next spring a lot for the shows. Yeah. But I still think on the mid-size level, between the sort of 1,000 to 3,000 capacity, we'll be seeing a lot of activity over late autumn and into Christmas, you know.
So, I mean, my theory, you know, I mean, I remember listening to one of Marcel's groups, and they were going, "Oh yeah, by June we'll be back in kicking." And you know, I sort of kicked in to Marcel later on. I says, "Marcel, you know, these numbers are way off. You know, we're not talking. June is impossible. You know, even this was back in March. You know, I said to him, June, forget it. You know, we won't be coming back on stream until November on a good day. Yeah, and it'll be next year before, you know, bigger events come back on. Oh, no, it'll be June. But you can't, can you? It's impossible, because, you know, what happened, no one, you know, you can't have a country that 1 minute is open, the next minute is shut, and then the next minute is back open again.
Back open again. Because I think it takes, I mean, my feeling is one of the things we're going to have to get over, or society's going to have to get over, is that we've got used to not going out. You almost feel that the world is out to get you. That's what you're told over and over and over.
Yeah. True, isn't it?
And it's crazy, because, you know, I look at myself thinking, Steve, get a grip, you know, go into a shop. Don't feel, I'm someone who's smoked, I've ridden motorbikes, all of these things, the decisions you've taken that you know are actually much more likely to kill you.
100%, 100%.
And I'm not encouraging people to go out and take chances, but at the same time, you know, we need to get on with our lives. And I suppose, I think it will get to such a low point where the risk becomes acceptable for everyone. So I think it will come back well before the vaccine. I suppose maybe that's the big discussion. You know, is it all closed until there is a vaccine? And there's no guarantee there's a vaccine. But I don't think that will be the case. I think there will be a sort of middle ground, grey area that becomes less.
Adrian Brooks, that's obviously now part of Tate with Brilliant Staging. And his theory is that what will happen in his mind is that you'll take somewhere like, say, Wembley, for example, and you'll put on a super stage, but you'll host more than one band. So, because he says all the money is in the move. So, for example, if you take any, Stereophonics and you shove them on at Wembley for 3 days, and then you take on somebody else and shove them there for 3 days, and then somebody else for 3 days, all the kit can stay where it is, and the people and the band will just do the moving. Yeah. So I mean, that's probably quite a good idea, because he calls it sweating the asset, so that you've not got to rip it all down, move it, put it all up, rip it down, move it. You just stay put. And you do this in maybe 6 strategic places across the country, and work that way for a while. He said the big bands won't put up with it forever, but it's a good start.
And then it's up to the designers to make it look different and unique. But then you could afford to have a lot of kit, couldn't you?
You could afford a lot of kit. You could really go to town, because it's going to stay there maybe for a month, and as opposed to it just being AC/DC on tour, it's not. He called it more like a matinee, if you want to call it that. He said it was more like a festival, but grown up and put into a stadium. Yeah. And that's not a bad idea, because if you've got a stadium that holds 80,000, you're probably only going to be able to put 20,000 in it at the moment. But you see, if the band can stay put, let's say the band was on for a week, they can go into their hotel. They're safe for a week, aren't they? They haven't got to move around on tour buses.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
There's a lot of sense in that, I think.
And I think the safe for a week is an interesting point that you raise, that the band will be safe. Because I've been surprised how many of the lighting designers have been talking about their artists and saying it's the artist who's not prepared to go out. And why? Because the artists are our age or older, Steve. Lots of them. We could write a long list of the ones significantly older than us.
Yes.
And they're saying, you know what? I'm just not interested. I don't care if I've got a private plane. I still have to move around. Not everywhere's been cleaned. When I hear stories about them, people saying going into the dressing rooms and ripping out the toilet and putting a new toilet in, and it's going to be used once, if that, and then rip it out again. You think these people are crazy, but hey, they've got the money and they're deciding, I don't need that money so much. But I think on the upside, isn't that great if that allows younger bands and newer bands a little bit of space to say, well, actually, we are keen to go out. We're not riding motorbikes without helmets anymore. We're not smoking cigarettes. So you know what? We're pretty safe.
You could easily cluster. So you could have almost like boxes. You could have like 12 seats and then a screen either side. Yeah. And then that's a little box for a family. And then that could be a family of 12 people, and they can all sit together. And then you could have 2 meter apart seats, couldn't you? I mean, you could make it work if you could leave it in place for long enough to be able to get the return back
through this period.
And that could work, and then people would feel quite safe, couldn't they? And the whole thing would work. I mean, whether the screens would start vibrating every time the bass went.
Well, there's a lot of analog problems to solve, I would say. When they talk about how do you deal with cues, face recognition, temperature recognition in the group, making sure that people are spaced out, because you'd have the problem that if somebody had a high temperature, then do you stop the people in front of him and behind them from going in, and it's not their fault. And so that would be, I've been really impressed at how much effort is going into working out the mechanics and the logistics.
I mean, you know in reality, because you've been to a concert, like I've been to a concert, and on a normal good day, it takes you 4 hours to get out of the car park, doesn't it? Right? We all know that. To get, thousands of people to a concert relies on multiple of thousands of people rammed on tube trains. If it's in London, you can't get to these places any other way. It's impossible. You can't do it. You can't walk there because they're too far away. It just doesn't work logistically. So it's going to be, the logistics will be the bigger nightmare. It's not, we can sort the stage sets out, I'm sure. We can sort the partitions out. We can sort the infrastructure inside the stadium out. But what we can't sort out is how to get, 20,000 people to the stadium at 2 meters apart, facial recognition, because the concert will be over by the time we've had 100 in.
And this is where, I mean, I suppose when I read about machines that can scan, temperatures of 360 people a minute, you think, what? But then you still don't want them all close together. And these are all things that are being worked on, but by some real industry heavy hitters, I have to say. So that side makes me feel, okay, we've got the best people on it, and we're a very resourceful industry, so we will find ways to address some of these things. But I also wonder if the fact that we've got such great smaller venues, Shepherd's Bush Empire, Brixton Academy, Electric Brixton, fantastic venues at under 2,000, because I'm guessing that the government will just keep de-restricting step by step. So I heard this week that Italy was going to allow concerts, but under 200, up to 200 people indoors and 1,000 people outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that what other governments will do will start easing that number up bit by bit. So that they don't do something really bold and then get crucified for it because there was an outbreak.
Yeah.
But being able to test the water and stick their toe in the water to a greater and greater extent. So I suppose I'm imagining there's going to be a point where the Shepherd's Bush Empires or the Brixton Academy, would be open.
How many people would say the Brixton Academy? How many would that hold?
At Shepherd's Bush?
Yeah.
I think Shepherd's Bush, I thought was 1,300, 1,350.
Oh, well, let's do the maths then. So if you've got let's take 1,000 just to round it down, and you was able to get £50 a ticket. That's 50,000 to put that event on, isn't it? Now, in the grand scale of things, 50,000 don't go a long way at the minute, does it?
Right, that's right.
So even if you do that, okay, taking that concept and saying, right, we go smaller and we do that, you've got to do the 50,000 a night, and you've got to do that then for 30 nights. You've almost got to create, haven't you, a hybrid between a theatrical performance on the Broadway and a concert. What you need is longevity, don't you? Your longevity. You need to put something on that you can sell multiples of tickets to for a very, very prolonged period of time for it to work. I believe that.
10 nights at Shepherd's Bush, for example, or because you have got a big audience wanting to see it, they're only allowed into smaller venues. And therefore, as you say, if you're not moving the equipment around and it is on a smaller scale, then obviously these things help with the payback as well, don't they, for the promoter and the artist. And just see a sort of gradual return to normal. I suppose I'm feeling a bit more optimistic this week. You see more people out, people being respectful and not going to, in touch with each other, food and things being handed to you with gloves and contactless, and we sort of adapt pretty quickly. But
we are doing, yeah, we are adapting. Of course, I think the artists, not all of them, but the true artists that are real artists and not just commercial animals, but the true artists that have not lost their feet firmly on the ground, that have been, making little concerts from their own front bedroom and singing to people over the internet. They're probably the type of people that would be quite happy to go and do 10 days at one of these smaller venues and play again to them, because they want to play their music to their fans, and they don't care if it's tiny venues and many of it, as opposed to going to Wembley for just one night and raking it all in one go. So I think you'll see the beginning of the true, proper, the real artists will start to want to do that. I think that's right.
That's right. It's not the sort of money-making manufactured shows less, and we see a grassroots return to smaller venues, smaller bands, while we slowly figure our way out of this. I mean, obviously we're all hopeful for the vaccine, and there seems to be some positive steps forward on that, and we'll know. Also knowing who's had it before, and if the antibody tests and all of these things. But I try and sort of largely stay away from it. When you hear phrases like "follow the science," I think I don't understand the science. I'm not going to try and follow the science, and neither do the politicians. They're just bullshit.
they're just talking shit to keep us all happy.
Yeah.
No, then, do you want to talk me through
what we see, which is people want to go out, and people will make huge efforts to go out when they're allowed to, and they're going to have to start letting people. They've taken the first step last week, and
I thank you so much for taking this podcast, and I really want to give you that few minutes to show your product if you're able to do that, or whether you're going to send it to me, I put it on the end, it doesn't matter. But you know, I want you to have that moment for you to show me this incredible new product that you've got.
And then what was it? Oh yes, it was sort of just a quick sort of like almost a sales video of the overview. Let's see, one sec. We need to go to share screen, and we're on Zoom. We have to remember what platform we're on.
That's it. That's the only way.
And the share screen gives you so many. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Is that right? If not,
I don't know. I haven't done that deliberately. Let me see if I can fix that.
You know what? My partners came up with that, so I think it's a default setting.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously. There you go. How's that? Try that.
Okay, let's try again. Okay, so let's look, and if we go to maybe desktop 2, you've got innovations. You've got big Avolites logo there, I think.
I've got nothing yet.
Got nothing yet.
I've just got you. That's all I've got.
Oh, I see. You have to confirm.
There you go. I have now.
There you go. And we're going to, once I won't run all the slides. I'd love people to contact me at steve@avolites.com and come and take part in some of these tours. But we're going to, we'll run through a lot of innovations that we've brought up over the years. Look at, you know, incredible things that we did when we did the 2012 Olympics and so on. But I'm just going to flick through till we find the one we want. We've got so many different sort of presentations here. Let's see. Okay, we've got things like the keyframe shapes we talked about. I will find, where are we, Splinter, here we are. You know, and this was really about, as I say, really bringing it all together, because these are new words for people: generative, immersive. They've heard them, they're buzzwords, but we want to demystify them. We want to say, hey, this is not just some, you know, bullshit word in a Reddit forum. This is what we do. We deliver. We've always delivered immersive experiences for people, you, I, and the designers who create them. So we just want to show how people can use these tools. Let's just have a quick look and see if it gives you a little flavor.
That's just wild, isn't it?
It was a really fun show. It was a really fun show. Let me jump back out of that and jump back into us. Let's see. How do we? One sec. Stop sharing screen. Come on, Zoom. You can make this easier, definitely.
Yeah, they never make it easy. Trust me.
What's that?
I always struggle to get back onto the main screen once I've shared, but I think you have to press cancel share or something, and then go back to your Zoom box.
Absolutely. Oh no, I'm in trouble now. It's on. You know what? I've got a second screen. You're like, oh, that old chestnut. Okay, we're back in business. That really only gave a glimpse, but all of the video, what looks like video, there were no video clips there. All of that visuals is being generated by the sound, and the sound is being influenced, not just in audio volume, it's being influenced by where people are in the space. So by moving around in the space.
Computer generated graphic, and based on
the audio, and the audio is generating the graphics. So you are effectively like controlling the whole thing. You could play the whole art piece in a massive room with these different presentations between you. You know, one would be controlling percussion, and not just the volume of percussion, but what was actually being played. It was just so hard to explain, but it gives you that.
So if you was a band, then what you're saying is you could take the audio input from the drummer, and then you could create interactive visual elements from what he's doing in the sound created from the drums.
That's right. And what if you then, scanned the audience so you could tell when there was more activity from their hands in the air and things started to go more crazy visually?
Yeah, then they're going more nuts, wouldn't they?
Involved. And once they realize that
Yeah.
they're having an impact on what's going on around us.
Oh, yeah, it's mental. It's
I
mental
think there's
because
lots of things
people.
we can do with this. This is the start of a new chapter. This whole thing of AR, VR, interactivity, generative video. They're all buzzwords that have been thrown around, and I think our industry, as a whole, doesn't see how they're going to impact on us. And we don't completely see the picture. You can't look into the future completely, but what we can tell is these technologies are here and they're affordable. You're producing fixtures at an affordable level that can deliver the physical light.
Yeah, I mean, if I could create fixtures, if I could create the drive module, which the same drive module, you just buy that and then it's future-proof for 10 years, for example. So you buy that, you make the investment, that's done, and then you can connect all the different lights, production lights that we make, or lights that we make on behalf of a designer that wants to make something special for them, but still uses the same control module. Okay. And then if we can then get that interacting with you and how you're thinking, then, we've got some magnificent, there's a future. And it's interesting you just say there that you say AR and VR, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, I've got a company that's called AVR, haven't I? So I'm right in it, man. I'm in the picture.
Steve, you were just, I was going to say that before you started speaking. I was going to say, when we first did that first job together, it just blew me away. I thought, what's the stuff coming out of this guy's brain? He was saying, I want to do this, and I want to take triggers from the audio, from the television, and then this to happen. You're like, this guy's on fire. But we did it.
Yeah.
We did it. We got the right designer in, and we got the technology together, and we absolutely knocked people's socks off, and we're going to keep doing that.
I thank you so much for taking the time out of
life. It's been an absolute honor. It's been a real pleasure and honor. And I would say, people, steve@avolites.com, always very easy to find me, all the methods, Facebook and what have you, but come and join some of the tours because, we love to spend a bit more time with you all. So,
all the best then, mate. We'll take care and good luck with everything.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. All the best. Bye for now. Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.